Hello, good afternoon. So who saw Four Little Girls today? Four Little Girls? Who saw Nina Simone, Four Women today? Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rick Dildine. I am the artistic director here at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. At ASF, our namesake playwright is William Shakespeare, and he is unable to join us today. Instead, we have a real-life living playwright with us today, Christina Ham.
Thank you.
So I want to give you a quick background on Christina. Christina Ham's plays have been developed and produced nationally and internationally with the Kennedy Center, Arena Stage, Center Theater Group, the Guthrie Theater, the Ensemble Studio Theater, the Goodman Theater, the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, Theater Row, and the Tokyo International Arts Festival. Her Theater for Young Audiences play, Four Little Girls, Birmingham, 1963, was directed by Tony Award-winning actress Felicia Rashad and performed in front of a sold-out audience at the Kennedy Center to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. It was simultaneously presented in 47 states across the country and streamed worldwide to commemorate the bombing, with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and former Attorney General Eric Holder conducting the post-show discussion in Birmingham. Her Theater for Young Audiences musical, Ruby, the story of Ruby Bridges, was the best-selling show in the history of St. Paul's Stepping Stone Theater. Christina is a two-time recipient of the prestigious McKnight Fellowship in Playwriting and a Jerome Fellowship from the Playwright Center in Minneapolis. She has received commissions from theaters all over the country, the Kennedy Center, the Guthrie Theater. She is a graduate of the University of Southern California. Different
My cousin
different
went to
SC.
the other USC.
And she has an MFA in playwriting from the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. She is a member of the Kilroys, who have been advocating for equal representation of women, trans, and non-binary writers on American stages. Recently, American Theater Magazine named her one of the top 20 most produced playwrights in America for the 2018-19 season. Two of those plays are right here. She is a recipient, she holds a Mellon Foundation Playwright in Residency at the Pillsbury House Theater, and she is a writer on the hit Netflix horror series, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Woo! Thanks for coming in for the show.
I'm very, very, very happy to be in my mom's home state, so it makes me very happy.
So that's something to start with, is your work has been influenced by the South, but you didn't grow up in the South, right?
No, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, but my dad is from South Carolina, so the USC Gamecocks reference was not lost on me. And my mom, I was telling someone, there's like 8 or 9 generations of my family, mom's family, that are Alabamians from all over, primarily in Birmingham, but some here and some in Bessemer and some in other parts of Alabama. So it very much feels like being home.
Did you spend much time here as a child?
I didn't. At the time, my mom and aunt usually came back for funerals, mainly. They have a very large family, but we still have a lot of family here, so a lot of my cousins are still in Birmingham. But I didn't grow up like coming here all the time, but I have come back since I've gotten older, for sure.
So you are a full-time writer, playwright, writing for television, but playwriting wasn't your first gig. You went into journalism first, right?
I did. So when I got into the other USC, I got into the journalism program and thought that was what I was going to study, and I didn't really care for that much, and I ended up studying creative writing, doing short story writing, and also political science, because at my school that's what everyone was doing, was becoming a lawyer, and I feel like also to be a good lawyer you have to be pretty good writer to make solid arguments and that sort of thing. So that's what I ended up doing. But I feel like a lot of the things I learned in journalism, I still do in playwriting, in terms of researching, in terms of investigating, in terms of asking questions of characters and situations. I think that all of that is still applicable.
Did you have an affinity for theater as a child? Did you go see theater as a child?
No, I saw no theater, mainly because I grew up in Los Angeles, which is very much a film and television town. And theater, both of my parents were very working class. They worked at the post office. And theater was and still is kind of very expensive. And so the family thing for us to do was to go to the Man's Chinese movie theater on a Friday and see an afternoon show and then go back home because it's so much cheaper. So I actually didn't end up getting into theater until I went to grad school, which was the reason I did grad school in it, because I was like, I can learn a lot, I know nothing, but I just know that I fell in love with this art form and I want to know more.
So as a playwright, can you tell us a little bit, what is the process of a playwright? What do you do? How do you take and put words on a page knowing that they've got to come off and come out of someone's mouth?
I feel like part of it is alchemy to a certain degree. I feel like it's alchemy, it's craft, and it's a gift. I really do believe that. I think for me, part of it is I can only take the examples of the two plays that some of you have seen today. For me, it was doing the investigative work, like doing a lot of research. So for Nina Simone, like I didn't read the biographies on her, but I read all the endnotes materials that the people used to compile the books. I read all those articles, and I ended up coming up with my own hypothesis for who I saw her as an artist. And for me, it hinged on the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, because when that happened, she described it as her being like Paul on the road to Damascus, like it was that life-changing. And because it was personal to me, because my mom's family went to that church, that was a very clear entry point for this like super famous singer, where I could find a way into who she was as an artist and her shift from being an artist to an artist and activist based on that incident. So for me, it's always about the research, just doing a lot of reading, hours and hours, hundreds and hundreds of pages of reading, and then putting that aside and just writing the play. Once I've done all the reading, I never go back to the research, because whatever I've picked up over the last several months to years, that's what I use.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time these two plays have been produced in repertory together in the same theater.
Yes,
What is
absolutely.
that like for you as a playwright?
It's really unheard of. Like, my career, as well as, and I know we'll talk about this later, has also been about being an advocate for other playwrights and mentoring other writers. And just even have your play produced in this country is it's so incredibly difficult. Like, I've texted my friend who like went to Juilliard, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm about to watch 2 of my plays be performed today at this theater. And he's like, that's unheard of, because it's just so difficult. Like, there are thousands of plays. I think it's like 15,000 new plays written every year. And so it's just impossible to like try to get your work out there if you're just starting out. So unless you're like Shakespeare, or, not, I mean, I don't know that even, August Wilson has his play cycle, but I don't know any theater that's like done all of his plays in rep or anything like Shakespeare, so it's really kind of unheard of.
So you said your mother attended 16th Street Baptist Church. You have revisited this event now twice. I'm curious, what was the original impulse to tell the story of Four Little Girls?
Actually, 3 times, because the Kennedy Center has commissioned me to adapt the Watsons Go to Birmingham. So it's almost, and all 3 of these plays were commissions. And so it's interesting. It's not even that people know this, but I feel like it's been my calling to keep somehow coming back to it and exorcising it, and really and also from a grief perspective from children, because the Watsons really deals, I don't know how many people know that story, but it's basically, the book is split into 2 parts by Christopher Paul Curtis. It's a TYA book, and it tells the story of the Watsons, who have a very difficult son, and they decide that he needs some old-fashioned home training from his grandmother in Birmingham. So they end up taking the trip down there in September 1963. And and so I'm in the middle of that adaptation now, and they'll produce that in March.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
TYA, so folks know what that is.
Theater for Young Audiences, or children's plays. It's the fancy term for children's plays.
And you've been a big advocate for TYA work.
I'm an absolute advocate for, if there are any aspiring playwrights in here, I'm an absolute advocate for TYA work because of what these kids were able to do today with Four Little Girls. But also, TYA work, they need new plays, and they will produce new work. And if you get a commission, you're 99.9% guaranteed to get it produced in a way that doesn't happen with adult work. And that was where I got my start. So I'm always an advocate. Kids are your toughest audience members. If you can keep them entertained, then you're doing a good job. It's true.
So music plays a large role in both of these shows.
Yeah.
Music is powerful. I'm just curious, is music something you've always been drawn to?
No, I hated musicals as a kid. I think mainly because when I was growing up, it was primarily the Andrew Lloyd Webber sound, which Cats and Memories and all that, which I didn't really like. And it wasn't until I, went to grad school and learned more about but I actually do like Sondheim, and I like Fosse, and they do some interesting work, then suddenly it kind of opened up to the other kinds of things that you can actually do with a really good musical. And so now I'm interested in it. They're expensive to make and develop, and you need the support from institutions to really be able to do it. But if you can find the right collaborators, you can make it happen.
So these pieces, I saw Nina Simone for Women at Arena Stage. I called you right afterwards and said, we have to do this play here. And Nina Simone's being performed quite a bit around the country.
Yes, it's in South Africa right now. It's in Bermuda, all over the United States as well.
I'm curious, what has been the reaction to the work around the country, in different parts of the country? Are you hearing different reactions? Are you hearing similar comments?
I have to say it was commissioned when I lived in Minneapolis for 13 years, and it was commissioned by a theater in St. Paul. It's about a $5 million budget, mid-sized theater. And it's a different audience there for obvious reasons because it's Minnesota. And that's I love Minneapolis because they give out the most artist funding of any state in this country. Like, they were real supporters of my work when I was trying to develop a lot of the stuff that's now being produced. But I think just because of the themes that you all have seen in both of these plays, I was really craving an audience that looked like me to really see it. Because that didn't really happen there, and that was okay because it was super successful there. It had a sold out run, and people loved it. But I was like, when I got it to DC, I was like, I'm home. And I was home because I have family there, but it was also important to have, just more of a crowd of people that looked like what you were writing about and understood those themes.
So right before we came out here, we got to hear the students talk about this work, this impact. This morning we had an amazing conversation about Black history in America. And in my researching on you, we're at the outset of Black History Month, and I told you before that in an previous interview, you were asked, what does Black History Month mean to you? And you replied, I guess it's weird for it to be only a month, because for me, every month is Black History Month. And we heard amazing testimonials this morning about the power of history, the power of stories. When you hearing these young people talk about wanting to preserve their history, to pass on knowledge, how does that make you feel?
That's great. I mean, for me, that's why I do this. I think I've been a writer now for 29 years. And I think for me, the biggest shift, I think all writers, I'll just speak for me, what ends up happening is when you're in grad school, it's like, you just want to be cool, you want to write the coolest thing, you're not really concerned about who the audience is. I feel like in a lot of ways you're writing journal entries, and some of your friends get it, but you're trying to be quirky and different and all of that. And I think I hit a point around 35. It was very specifically 35, and I was like, I want to communicate to an audience, and I want to create some method of change in some way. And that's when I started getting all these TYA commissions about the 4 little girls, about Ruby Bridges. I think over 16,000 people saw that play in February at the theater where it was done. All these stories where I get to be the person who's telling the stories that saying the tough things that people don't want to hear about what's happened to these communities, like dealing with Nina Simone's story. For me, it wasn't just, I was not going to deal with her mental illness because that wasn't the kind of play I wanted to write, but I wanted to look at this artist who was creating during a time where not only her work was being censored as a Black artist and a Black female artist, but that the women who were the backbone of the civil rights movement were also being censored and sidelined. And I think by telling those stories, I feel like I've found a purpose, and that the work bleeds beyond the stage into the audience, and it does become kind of a call to arms for other audience members. I'm hoping to spread the message as well. And that comes in the form of these kids, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. I did write the play, but it's the people performing, it's the people in the audience, it's the communal aspect of theater that really keeps me going. So,
thank you. What advice do you have? Because I know there's young people that are in the audience tonight What advice do you have for young people at this intersection of theater and activism?
Find your story to tell. We all have a story, and it's important. All voices are important. Even if I don't want to hear your voice, there's a lot of times I don't want to hear a lot of what I'm hearing, but it's important to have those discussions. I think we're finding that out more and more as we keep going down this path that our country is dealing with right now. So I think it's important to find whatever story that is that you have and tell it. Find a way to tell it. Before I was being produced the way I am now, I was in a theater company, and we all produced each other's work. And we found a way to do that because we wanted to do it on our own terms. We wanted to decide, do I really want the press coming to see my show and weighing in on it, or do I just want it to be word of mouth? And there are times when I decided that. So I think by any means necessary, like, find a way to get your work out there.
You've been an advocate for mentorship, that it's important to be a mentor. What makes a good mentor?
I think for me, it's someone who listens, someone who knows how to ask the right questions, someone who's able to push you a little bit beyond what you think you can be, and to be better, to do better, to create better, to dig deeper, to demand more of yourself, and to give you a hug when you need it. I mean, I've done all of those things over the years. For me, I work in TV now as well, and that's the part that I miss, is the teaching and the mentorship, because I just can't do it at this moment, but I'm looking forward to going back to it.
So you mentioned television. How is writing for television different than writing plays? Is it different?
Yes, it's a lot more money. The budget, I mean, the budgets are bigger, the audiences are bigger. And I think, like, because the Sabrina show is the first show I ever did, and I told my boss at the time, I said, I want, like, when I did my show at Arena, it was I think a 635 seat house, and the whole run was sold out, but I'm like, still, the number of people that saw Sabrina is so much more than what saw my show there. And so it's just access. That's all it is. That's the big difference.
I want to give you all a chance to ask Christina a question. So think about if there's something you want to ask. I'll ask you this. You've talked about your parents. What qualities of your parents do you like the most?
My mom was actually, I didn't realize this because both my parents are dead now, but my mom was a secret writer. And I think that's where I got it from, is definitely from my mom. I remember when she wasn't working at the post office, she was starting a novel in this spiral notebook that she had gotten from the drugstore. And yeah, and so I feel like that is a big part of, like, who my mom is or was, that I still kind of carry around. I don't know, my parents, I feel like once your parents are gone, you start to realize kind of who they were in a way that you don't really appreciate sometimes when they're alive. But I feel like a lot of my work now is piecing together who they were. And like you said, because a lot of my storytelling centers on Southern issues or things that have happened in the South, I feel kind of like an anthropologist, like kind of tracing back, like who they must have been and what they were about.
Are there any questions for Christina? Oh, we've got questions. Yes, sir. Right here in
I
the
don't want to put you on the spot. You taught my son at Carleton College, Christopher Griffin. Was he a good student?
We have a father down front asking for if his son was a good student of hers.
He was okay. No, Chris was great. It was, yeah, I won't mention the email you sent. No, I kind of will, because I feel like it's relevant.
It's fine.
Yeah, because Chris sent me an email letting me know that he and his family were coming to see the show and if I would be here. And he reminded me who he was by saying he was one of the 2 African American students that I had at Carleton. And I was like, no, I remember you because your screenplay was fantastic. But point taken, like again. I remember Pigeons, and I remember the breakthrough you had on that at the end of the year. And now you're going to be a lawyer where you can be a donor, which we need in theater.
Yes.
So the set of Nina Simone down in the Octagon, oh my goodness, it's so perfect, and it just was so affecting. I burst into tears when I walked in. How much of that did you envision, and how much of that was the set design?
Well, I think the set designers realizing part of what I mentioned in the script. I think for me, with the Nina Simone play in particular, well, not that, I mean, they're both take place in the 16th Street Baptist Church. But for me, that bombing was our Black Greek tragedy. So to have Nina Simone in the ruins of that church, whether it's real or kind of imagined, made sense to me. And because the theater that commissioned the play was so much, the space was, I guess it was about that size, like 1,500 seats. Yeah, so I very much wrote it for that size of a space and just having the ruins and debris in there. And then I think, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but the face of Jesus had been blasted off the way it was on the stained glass.
Yes.
Did you write both plays sequentially or simultaneously?
I wrote For Little Girls first, so that was commissioned by Stepping Stone Theater in St. Paul. And the artistic director at the time knew that my mom's family had gone to the church, and he was interested in telling a story about them. But we didn't want to focus on just the tragedy of who they were, but mainly who they could have been. So the quote at the beginning from Angela Davis talks about, you know, we only called them the 4 little girls, and when Mason mentioned, like, knowing who they were by their names was and is very important. And then Nina Simone was written 3.5 years later, and that was also commissioned as well. And they left it up to me how I wanted to frame it, and I wanted to use her song For Women as a framework to really deal with colorism among Black women in our community, the damage and healing that we have to go through when dealing with that, but also looking at the backdrop of the civil rights movement and the women involved in it as well. It just deals with multiple issues that I wanted to get into, and I thought that Nina Simone provided a good opportunity for that.
Yes. Right here.
Your Nina has a big fight with, she wants to be an artist and address the struggle through her art versus other people that want to. I'm wondering how your own story, if that's, that tension informed the work there.
How my work informed,
How, if you personally
Oh.
have had any issue with people wanting you to be activists in another way besides your art that you are resistant to, and you want to do it through your art, or backwards of that?
no, I mean, he asked me the question if, like Nina Simone, if I found the rub between being artist and activist in my own work, and whether others are pushing me and have pushed me in a direction to do one or the other. I haven't really found that. I'm not sure why, but I haven't found that, because I found that a lot of my activism is like in what I do as an artist, and people know that, my students know that. When I was in Minneapolis, I also taught Intro to Black Theater History, and so I taught everything from anti-slavery drama to lynching dramas, to the Black Arts Movement. And so a lot of that kind of activism, being on the front lines, I was in the front lines in my classrooms and with my students, and really making sure that they did well. But I feel like I have enough people around me that will hold me accountable. And I feel like if you're looking for a good mentor or a good peer group, that's super important, to surround yourself with people that will hold you accountable or will tell you what you need to do. I think like your comment to the kids earlier is it's important to have people in your life that will speak truth to power, that keep your art honest. And I have a lot of people in my life. A lot.
Any other questions? Yes, Joe.
Yes, sir. Our daughter is a graduate from Savannah College of Art and Design, and she majored in creative writing. So she loves to write, and her thoughts go from one thing to the next. So what can you say, and her name is Aaliyah, so I want you to say, tell Aaliyah. So what can we tell Aaliyah, and she sometimes frustrated all her writing, so many thoughts, so many ideas. So what motivated you as you wrote, as you progressed from your graduate work on, when you went from your creative writing? So for her, it's challenging, but she's still trying to get to a certain point or a certain breakthrough. So what can we do, not just concern her with her student loan repayment, try to not give up on this creative writing? You're like, she was unable to be here, but you would be her main person. So tell Aaliyah.
Tell Aaliyah it's a marathon and not a sprint. And that, I mean, I've had to tell a lot of people I mentor that, because it's really, really difficult. Like now you guys are seeing me and you're hearing my bio and it sounds amazing and it's great, but like I said, I've been writing for 30 years. And when I think about it, I started in 4th grade because I had tonsillitis a lot. So I was really sickly, so I would be in bed writing all the time. It's really, really difficult. And the great thing about it is, even though my parents were very blue collar, didn't make a lot of money, but sent me to one of the most expensive schools in this country, they never pressured me to get a real major. What do you mean you're a creative writing major? They were always supportive because they always knew that I loved writing and they knew I was talented. My only regret is that they don't see that all their money that they dumped into me, paid off, and that I could do nice things for them. But she's really gonna need you guys to be, I think, supportive and understanding. It's just really, really tough. It is. It's really tough, and I tell the people I mentor, you have to make up your mind whether you're going to be an artist during the famine years where no one gives a fig what you're writing, and whether you're going to be an artist when you're getting all the awards and all the press and all the attention and people love you and they want to be near you and rub up on you or whatever. You know, you just have to, she has to, it's really a battle with yourself. It's less, it is about the outside world, but at the end of the day, like, I found my most solace when I became clear with myself and God that this is why I'm here. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm in the right place. He will move me when it's supposed to happen. And I feel like that's what's happened now. I'm sitting here in front of you guys because of that. And I really feel that for your daughter as well. Like, she has to reach a personal peace so that she can move powerfully with her art.
Thank you.
This is really a follow-up to the same question in a different way. I have two sons, both of whom are writers, unpublished, and I'm interested in what your daily discipline is, how you apply yourself to the craft and make sure that you produce, when you get a commission, how do you get from A to B?
It really depends what it is. Like, like right now I'm in reading mode because I'm on a new show, and it's a Lena Waite's show that looks at the regentrification of Compton in 1953. So it deals a lot with our housing policies in the United States and how Black people were shut out of housing and how those laws affected how we are sitting here today and our inability to gain wealth. So in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, I've read close to 1,500 pages on housing policy, so I can go into that room and be an expert on housing policy. I feel like whatever I'm writing about or whatever your sons are writing about, I feel like we're the biggest experts, ideally, on the stories that we're telling. So right now I'm just reading a lot. I'm rewriting because I'm in the middle of the Kennedy Center thing. So it's not about me necessarily writing every day, but I'm always working. I'm always doing something towards one of my projects. So whether that's rewrites, whether it's reading up on something new, whether I'm in the middle of developing a musical, ironically. So I'm doing a lot of conference calls with my director. And I also, now I have a little bit extra money, so I rent out, these shared writer spaces that have started popping up all over. Because my husband and I, it would be unattainable for me to be writing in the same room with him because he has to have the TV on, he has and then he's streaming stuff, then he's writing. I can't work like that. So I have my own writer space. So I think it's whatever your sons are doing, even if I'm going for a walk, I'm still working because I'm working out story problems or I'm germinating ideas. So I think when you really become when you're in the process of becoming a working writer, it takes on many different forms. I don't know, I guess some people like to say they get up at 6 every morning. I don't do that, but I do sometimes write overnight. It's not ideal, but that's where I am right now. So I just embrace the fact that I can stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning and work, and then sleep after that. So I think it's really them being very specific about whatever it is that they're doing, and and continuing to do that. Is that helpful? Okay.
Well, let me just say this. One thing that frustrates me is they both write fantasy. And you can argue there's some research involved. I like the way you do. What do you have to say about fantasy writing?
I like some fantasy. It's not the genre that I'm most fond of, but I think when, whatever they're researching, I think there's a such thing as too much research. Like, at some point you gotta get off the stick and start doing it. So if they're saying they're writing fantasy and they need to do like all this research and they haven't written anything in 10 years, then that's a little suspect. Everyone has their process.
We have time for one more question, or, oh, right there. Jace.
I play for little girls, and I was just wondering. I was just wondering, are we portraying the story as you envisioned it when you wrote it?
No. No, you were going beyond how I envisioned it to tell it. And for me, that's the whole purpose of why I do theater. It's not about having someone like literally take what I've written and just copy it verbatim, but it's to take it and to elevate it, to like bring your life's blood into the character that you're portraying and all of your peers are portraying up here, to make it, a much more moving experience. I feel like scripts are templates. They, you call and ask if you can change the words, but they're not like gospel. Like, I love when directors are like, what do you think about this? And I can say no, but usually I don't. It's rare that I tell a director no. I'm just like, I don't know, try it. Like, maybe it'll work. And if it does, I want to see that. Like, the play has been produced a lot now, and I'm really interested, and I hadn't seen it, I told Rick, in like maybe 3 or 4 years. And so to see this production of it, and to see you guys do such an amazing job with it, was like, for me, it was like new again, honestly. So thank you.
So in conclusion, thank you for coming here today. One of the things that we heard this morning at our conversation on Crest was, if we don't tell our story, someone else will. And we are telling stories here at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival that are relevant, that matter, and get people to want to talk, and talk on the car ride home. This past summer, we went on a road trip to the South, asking people, who is the South? What is the South? Where is the South? And what we came out of that with was an excitement and an energy to tell stories about who the South is today. This year, 2019, is the 200th anniversary of Alabama becoming the 22nd state. So beginning this fall, we're going to commission 22 new plays about transformative moments in the South. Moments that had a lasting impact on our people, on our culture, and our land. So that those stories start here in Montgomery and they go out to the world. So thank you for being here today as our living playwright.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all. Come on, say.